We've got lots of speakers, a number of them online, a couple here in person, but what I'll do is just introduce the moderators and organizers of this session, and then I'll hand it over to them. First is Stephanie DeBoer. She's here with us on stage, an associate professor of East Asian languages and cultures at Indiana University. She researches transnational or global cinema and media studies. Her research focuses on the intersection of film and media with space, place, and location. She's working in collaboration with the Framing of Global Initiative with the Center for the Study of Global Change at Indiana University. This is a 5-year Mellon-funded initiative under which she's developing a book manuscript titled No Hard Edges, Contingencies of Chinese Digital Film, Media, and Location. And together with Stephanie is Kristy H. Kang. Let me actually go to the Zoom now, because that's where Kristy is. So Kristy's there.
Recording in progress.
We're recording this. Actually, I should have done Steph's intro. I'll say Steph's intro quickly so that we have it on the video.
And by the way, I am linked to the media school. I'm also affiliated with East Asian Studies, but I am linked to the media school at IU.
Okay. So Stephanie DeBoer at the Media School at Indiana University researches transnational or global cinema and media studies. And so I'll also introduce Kristy H.A. Kang, Associate Professor, School of Media Arts and Engineering, and Associate Professor at the Design School at Arizona State University. She's a practice-based researcher whose work navigates the triangulation of place, geographies, and cultural memory. Okay, so I'll hand it over to both of you, and I'll be there to support if we have any technical glitches.
Great, thank you. So thanks so much for, as you see, we have a hybrid session here, a range of concerns of distance, institutional concerns, and illness means that we have a beautifully hybrid session here. 2 of us are in the room, but they will be able to hear your questions. You can hear them, and so please, as you're listening to our presentations and so on, do think about questions. We do hope that this can be a very interactive session. I do want to say thank you to the Media Architecture Biennale and Dave for inviting us to contribute this symposium here as well. And I'll just pass it over to Kristy, my collaborator in organizing and moderating this session, and she'll begin by introducing the Emergent Visions project, and then I'll follow by framing the session that we're doing here today.
Hey, thank you for joining us today from your various locations and time zones for our roundtable session, Emergent Visions, Approaches to the Diverse Situations, Spaces, and Strategies for Urban Screens. And I'd also like to extend thanks to the organizers of the Media Architecture Biennale this year for hosting our gathering today. So Emergent Visions grew out of an international symposium on urban screens and public media art called Emergent Visions Adjacency in Urban Screens, hosted in Singapore at my previous institution, Nanyang Technological University, in 2018. Co-organized by myself with Stephanie DeBoer at Indiana University and Ann Balsamo at University of Texas, Dallas, it gathered a group of international artists, curators, and scholars for dialogue and thoughtful critique concerning the diverse frames and practices through which we might recognize the visions, affects, and provocations in and around urban screens. Growing from the contributions and conversations that took place at the symposium, my colleague Stephanie and I are currently co-editing a special issue for the journal Cultural Studies. The special issue will present and perform an assembly of practices, artistic, scholarly, critical, and curatorial, and is constituted in 2 parts. The first is a series of scholarly essays in print and digital format. And the second part is an adjacent website which will serve as platform and repository for a series of online roundtable provocations and dialogues between invited international scholars, artists, and curators. The first first provocation was held in January 2023 and situated in Hong Kong with media artist Ellen Pao in conversation with M+ museum curator Silke Schmickel and media scholar Chris Berry. The second provocation was held in April and situated this time in New York's Times Square, bringing together scholar Holly Willis in conversation with media artists Nancy Baker Cahill and Jennifer West. Continuing in this series of dialogues, we're pleased to bring together for mab23 an international group of scholars and practitioners to share their work on urban screens and media art with you today.
Thank you, Kristy. So today then, in this session today, we continue to be interested in addressing how urban screens and facades are distinctly situated, even as they're widely present across interconnected global to local and online to offline arenas. So some of the questions that that initiated our discussion include how might we better account for, as well as learn from, a full range of urban screen contexts and circulations. Another question is what frameworks and entry points might enable us to newly address screen locations and practices as they are both comparable but also distinct from one circumstance to another. And also, how might these insights potentially challenge our understandings of the possibilities and perils of screens in public space? So we continue to be drawn to the format and frame of the provocation, and many of us have been using this, the term and the format provocation, including our publication in this at the Biennale this week and last week. But we found it also very useful, and we think of it as the sharing of situated practices in and around urban screens as they might provoke discussion and thereby stimulate or inspire new insights, ideas, sensibilities, or practices. So the provocations that we offer today, they on the one hand can be geographically situated from urban centers in China and Hong Kong, Karachi and Singapore, Sao Paulo, Seoul, or Sydney. Yet they are also situated in their spatial strategies and in the particular publics that they each address or produce, as well as their range of relationships between the local and the global, public and private, indoor, outdoor, online, and the physical and sensorial. You'll also see that the frameworks and entry points for each of these provocations are not only of the screen itself, but also of the spaces and the arenas adjacent to it. And again, I feel like there's some connections to the previous session and the focus on what is not only in the screen and of the screen, but everything that surrounds it and the context. And we'll continue that kind of conversation. All of our presenters are here with us, virtually or in person, and they are ready to contribute to the Q&A discussion to follow. But given the vast time zone differences, some of them are in the very wee hours of the morning, we've opted to share the online provocations from folks on Zoom as pre-recorded presentations, 8 to 10 minutes each. So they're here, but their presentations are pre-recorded just to be sure that we're awake and that alertness can be saved for the Q&A session to follow. I think we've all been here, so we're working with time zones here. And then finally, to ensure full time for our presentation and discussion, I won't go into the full bios of the really amazing work of each of our presenters, but you can go to the go online to the program and find out more about their work as well. So with no further ado from me, we'll begin with our first presentation, which will be from the room with Taqi Shaheen. And I will pass this over to you, and we will share the presentation.
Thank you, Steph. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Taqi Shaheen, and thank you, Dave and mab23 for inviting and putting this all together. And I come from a city which is called the most dangerous city in the world, which is Karachi, and for all the more reasons. So I was curious to know that how those reasons actually affect the kind of spaces that we are encountering. More so, as my background, I work as an artist, I work as a curator, I do game design as well, and I create books. So quite a few strands that I work in. But this particular presentation and this provocation you're going to see is actually a more detailed article we are developing. And so it would be, I thought it would be nice to share a few snippets from that line of research and inquiry and see what your thoughts are on it. So screens as public testimonies. So we've been having fantastic discussions during this these last 2 days. But I was really curious and excited to know that how screens actually work as public testimonies in a city which is highly politicized, which has a history of violence, and how does this affect the general public at large? So if we move on to the first slide. So this is one of the installations, screen-based installations done in Karachi. So just to give you a context of geography and the kind of site we are looking at. And if we move further, in the next slide. So this is what media history tells us about the public screens in Karachi. So usually what happens is that when we look at television and we look at how television has been seen as a very domesticated kind of device, but interestingly enough, when Philips was introduced in Karachi, it was actually introduced in public spaces. And this is one ad which says that we are so surprised that our viewers still don't have television, and how sorry it is, and this is such a plight, and we would like them to have television, but first we would like them to enjoy these public spaces and enjoy these television streams. But then while they were actually promoting and commercializing television, there was another parallel activity during the 70s that was happening in Karachi. That was martial law, that was a dictatorship period. And then there was a military dictator taking over a democratically elected government. So this is what the scenario was like. If you move on. The next slide. Yeah, so my concern has been that who screens who captures who, and who ends up getting the implications of whatever that screen. But mostly what we have seen that we talk about application of screens, but what about implications of screens? Once you get screened, then screening itself is sort of, of course, we have gone through this whole 2.5 years of COVID period. Screening is sort of a medical term as well, where it seems that it's sort of diagnosis of a disease, a kind of infectious disease. So what kind of infectious disease this kind of screening brings in? In this particular image, there's a photographer who is actually photographing a militant, and he's also being photographed by his own student, which is on the right, which you're not able to see right now. So if we move on to the next screen, next slide. These are a few snapshots from the protests for Movement for Restoration of Democracy, also being captured by the photographers. But while they're having these protests, there are some analog surveillance at play. So what kind of analog surveillance used to happen during the 70s? So if we move further, Kristy, can you move the picture a bit? So we just need to see, yeah. So you can see this guy. He is screening these people. So these photographs could be taken to the police, identify the men who were part of the protest, and later be penalized, and they may be flogged for their actions. So that's what we see in the next screen. Yep, next slide. So these are taken, caught, and then, as you would see, now they're being taken to the stadium where they'll be flogged. But if you see in the background, there's this text which says RENA Radio Television. So now this is the emergence of radio television in Karachi on the streets, where you are actually seeing an overlap between how the television is introduced, how the protests are being seen, and at the same time, how the politics are coming into play. So if we move on. So this is public flogging being done. After the surveillance, the analog surveillance, these people were actually brought to the stadiums, and at times they were given a mic in front of them so that to create a spectacle out of it, that their screams were heard by these people just to make sure that they don't get into such stuff ever again by the military dictatorship. Next. These are a few other examples from the same flogging. So then if we see, while Karachi was having these things, we have the government of politically elected Prime Minister, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, but at the same time, what was happening globally? Globally, in Chile, Global South, we had President Allende. So President Allende actually was thinking about using screens as well. But unfortunately, the kind of utopian visions he had for the screens could not receive a fate any different than flogging. So if you look at the next screen, next slide. So there was a British cybernetician, Stafford Bear, who was asked by President Allende to come over and see how we can increase the happiness level of citizens through screens. Allende, being a cybernetician, he proposed a model, and this was the model, what it looks like. Can we see the model? Yeah. So now he modeled the whole process, that how city works, how happiness levels can be examined, can be modeled, can be implemented using basic technological infrastructure. Chile at that point only had 40 computers in the whole country. So this is what he used, like he mapped down, okay, who is the one who's exploited, who is the oppressor, who is the oppressed, where are these chains coming from, and how this whole thing connects with the overall environment, which he used to call algedonic loop. Algedonic loop is a loop which is created when an organism, institution, or any kind of entity deals with the environment. Okay, we move on. So now, these are the machines they used to use, telex machine, to connect with the main office, which was an operation room, with other factories all over Chile to make sure that they get to see the production levels and happiness levels of their citizens. Next. This is the screening room. This is what it looks like. So you get to see all the feeds of what people are doing, what kind of productivity they're engaged in, and if at all there is a problem. The premise of this whole system was that when you actually look at cities, the moment you realize that, oh, the problem has gone beyond your control, you can't do anything about it. So what the president wanted was to have a real-time information on the problems being faced by the people, and hence the machine. But CIA at that point thought otherwise. They thought there should be a military dictatorship that should take over Chile because that was not in line with American agenda. So then the project was scrapped. Next. And in the British press, it was reported as, oh, Chile run by computer. Oh my God. So then there was a counter campaign by the opposition party, and this is what opposition party came up with. So they had these cartoons which said that, oh, this is a very sinister project, which is using computers to run the country, and hence, can we see the illustrations? Yeah. So these are published in local press, and the way the British cybernetician, the way he was working, trying to make things work with limited kind of facilities and technological resources. America at that point had around 40,000 computers, while Chile, there was a huge difference between it, and America at that point was building its own internet system. But this internet system, how it was connecting all the major nodes, factories, and production points, was not very much in line with what was needed and what was expected from Chile. So if we move on further. So Allende, the President Allende, he was taken over by Pinochet, but General Pinochet But before he actually thought that I should dismantle this project, he was asked by Stafford Bear that, okay, let's do a public demonstration of this project so that we can have public in our, we can take public into our confidence. But the problem was that Allende said that, no, this might be too much getting into government secrets. So that he refused to share the details with the public. And that proved disastrous for the whole project. And then at one point, 9/11, 1973, his palace was bombed, and this was the last radio speech Allende made. So this is the army. They attacked the palace, and this is how the palace was bombed. So this was quite a utopian, ambitious project, including screens, trying to make sure that something good happens to the country, but that was unsuccessful. And while coming back to Karachi, so in Chile, the dictatorship got in place, Pinochet started his rule, and then so this is the dictator who ended up taking over Pakistan's ruling party. And then that's on the right, you have General Pinochet, who took over Chile. And on the bottom left, you have Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who was hanged in 1979. So next. And Pinochet was killed, and he actually faced the same fate as Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. So from this point, where you see the police taking over this man for flogging, fast forward to 2018, we see a similar incident where a police inspector was actually involved in police killing and police murder of a young man called Nuqibullah Masood. This is a public space where this exhibition is happening. This was Karachi Biennial 2019, and there was this public installation that shared the story of this man who was killed by the police. Can we have a next slide? So this is the inspector. On the right, you see Nuqibullah Masood. And if you move further, the artist, Adila Suleiman, made a public installation based on this story that how this particular man, young man, was killed by the police guy. So if we move forward, these are just a small excerpt from the installation. So this is Nuqib's father, who is waiting for justice. And this was publicly exhibited at Frere Hall, which is one of the exhibition venues for Karachi Biennial. So the whole story goes, and it's being told in the... So the story was publicly shared, but as fate would have it, the exhibition was ransacked, attacked 3 times, and this public installation was taken down. But as a result of it, the story actually got around, and this became the biggest story through the public screens in Pakistan about Rao Anwar and whatever atrocities he's been making. And he killed around 400 people in his, which were actually unreported crimes during his role as a police officer. So after a few days of this exhibition, his father also died, waiting for justice. But even though the justice was not served, but it was publicly shared, publicly condemned. And that was the testimony, that was the power of screen that generated enough buzz to make sure that he gets to be in the limelight, which he was not previously there. So with this public screen, then in terms of media history, in terms of media archives, my concern would be, and my line of inquiry is, that how is it that these public screens can also, besides being public spectacles, can also talk about human condition and how they can be made as public testimonies for others to come and see, rather than being a very passive projections. How can they be active players in our own, talking about our own perverse, and our own human condition that we're facing? Because so far, we see a lot of potential in these public screens, but somehow it has not been manifested enough. So that's what we've been researching on, and I thought I should be sharing with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Taqi. So Kristy is online playing DJ for our next performance. So she's going to show us the presentation from Yomi Braester. And he is Professor of Cinema and Media Studies at the University of Washington, Seattle.
Thank you all for attending. Let me just jump right into my talk. Urban screens are often celebrated as tools for creating public spaces that empower citizens. Urban spaces, or urban screens in this version, facilitate what may be called Walking the City 2.0, digitally enhanced strategies for claiming the streets and rendering them into a benign public sphere. And yet, I suggest that urban screens are simply tools for curating public space in the hands of an authoritarian government. They can become tools for surveillance and self-surveillance. When deployed by artist activists, the same screens can indeed suggest how citizens can wrestle power over public spaces, if only in a limited and temporary way. And when used by architecture offices with commercial stakes, urban screens are subjected to market forces. One way or another, we would be remiss to take for granted the function of urban screens. They shape and reshape what we mean by outdoors and indoors, public and private, local and global. The first example is taken from a commercial work, namely showrooms for selling office space designed by Yuko-Lab, a leading office that specializes in showrooms that present state-of-the-art spectacles. For those interested, I've written a detailed analysis of Yuko-Lab's works in an essay that's part of the forthcoming special issue of Cultural Studies, edited by Steph and Kristy, who are hosting this panel. Yuko-Lab's visual vocabulary includes immersive environments achieved through tailor-made spaces that contain screens of non-standard sizes, moving walls that double as screens, and maquettes that burst out of ceilings and floors. Yuko-Lab's presentations are as much about experiencing the exhibition space and becoming aware of how medias change space as they are about the buildings being marketed. The showrooms present multiple views of the city, mimic the urban environment, and open onto outdoor vistas. A point of note is that these screens and other medias keep referencing the outdoors, but they are not urban screens in the sense of digital media on the street. Rather, they conjure hermeneutic spacetimes encapsulated in architectural spectacles. Second, the target audience is not only potential buyers, Like the landmark buildings being advertised, the showrooms become showcases for the municipal government, with high-level officials leading distinguished guests through the premises. Being associated with cutting-edge showroom media contributes to the standing of high-level PRC politicians who wish to present a forward-looking vision. In fact, the International Finance Center showroom, who you see here, was kept open long after the building's completion because it served also these political purposes. In sum, these showrooms suggest that experiencing urban spaces can be visually constrained, temporally regimented, and socially exclusive. Not an augmented, superimposed version of the city, but an alternative media environment that tames and contains urban space. The second example I bring before you deals with the question of outdoors, indoors, public-private, in what may be considered a mirror image of the UCO Lab showrooms. Instead of creating a realm of fantasy that replaces open and public spaces, the enclosed and private space challenges the public sphere and demonstrates its inadequacy. The case in point is Wei Wei Cam by Ai Weiwei, a rather famous Chinese artist and vocal critic of the Chinese government. Ai's movements were regularly monitored. In 2011, after being detained for 81 days, surveillance cameras were set all around his residence. In response, Ai created his counter-images to videos feeding into the Public Security Bureau. On April 3rd, 2012, Ai set up 4 cameras inside his house, including one directly over his bed. The Wei Wei Cam images were streamed live on the internet around the clock until 46 hours later, the authorities ordered Wei Wei Cam to be shut down. Wei Wei Cam established an uncomfortable symmetry between the use of cameras and screens in public and private spaces. Wei Wei Cam redefines urban screens and their function. To repeat, whereas UCO Lab's showrooms create a realm of fantasy that replaces open and public spaces, Wei Wei Cam uses the enclosed private spaces to challenge the public sphere and demonstrate its inadequacy. Last, I turn to a bona fide urban screen. But here too, we encounter not the celebration of public space, but a demonstration of its limitations. The artwork in question is Our 60-Second Friendship Begins Now, later renamed Countdown Machine. This was a 9-minute-long light show designed for and exhibited on the facade of the International Commerce Center in Hong Kong. The display surface covers a total of 77,000 square meters, to date the Guinness World Record holder for the largest light and sound show on a single building. That's more than twice that of Burj Khalifa. Since 2012, ICC hosted light shows by new media artists from around the world. Now, Countdown Machine, exhibited in June 2016, riffs on a well-known episode in Wong Kar-wai's film In the Mood for Love. The light show ends with a minute, featuring a countdown starting at 979012496, which the artists explained later as indicating the seconds left until July 1st, 2047, when Hong Kong's government will completely dissolve into the PRC. As an implied mourning of Hong Kong's disappearance into memory, Countdown Machine was an affront to the PRC and a transgression of ICC's policy that light shows should not include works containing any political elements. As soon as Countdown Machine went up, its creators, the 2 Hong Kong artists Samson Wong and Jason Lam, made the political message explicit. As expected, and most likely planned by the artists, the publicity made the curators take the work down. Subsequently, Wong and Lam's stunt led the sponsors to cancel other collaborations between art organizations and ICC. Countdown Clock is a well-executed light show, yet its main value lies in Wong and Lam's provocation, forcing the curators and sponsors' hand. The very publicness of the work, exhibited on the largest facade of its kind in the world and visible across Hong Kong, that is also what doomed it to become barred from public space. The artwork continues its life on public screens, as it can still be viewed on YouTube. Countdown continues in public as a controversy, a discourse, at the cost of its visual presence. Urban screens are temporary, so-called soft monuments. Yuko Labs showrooms are eventually dismantled, even if given an exceptional reprieve after the advertised spaces are sold. Weiwei Cam and Countdown Clock rely on real-time streaming and exhibition, and in both cases, the artists expect and even instigate their termination of the artworks by those who control public space. Countdown Clock is an intended metaphor for urban screens. It counts down time for the annihilation of public art and collective memory. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Yomi, for the pre-recorded conversation, but Yomi is also with us. So next we have the presentation from Shujiao Xie Shujiao on urban media art in mainland China. She's a Ph.D. candidate at Nanyang Technological University School of Art Design and Media.
Hello everyone, I'm Shujiao, a second-year Ph.D. student at the School of Art, Design and Media, Nanyang Technological University. Today, I'm very delighted to share some insights into my PhD project, which focuses on urban media art in mainland China. To provide a comprehensive understanding, let me begin with a brief historical context. In 1978, China introduced the Reform and Opening Up policy, which marked a significant turning point in the country's economic and political history. This policy allowed foreign investment and increased Western influence. Subsequently, new policies were implemented to facilitate urbanization. The 1990s witnessed a crucial shift as the population began to explode every year. This urban process produces ever-evolving urban spaces in China, which are not only about the physical elements, but a composite carrier of urban society, economy, culture, and environment. Moreover, the global rise of cultural and creative industries has further enhanced the importance of urban space, as the governments invested in public projects and cultural infrastructures to improve cities' competitive edge. This led to artistic urbanization in mainland China. Consequently, the urbanization process has also sparked a proliferation of public art projects throughout Chinese urban spaces. On the other hand, the new media revolution also started around the 1990s in China, and it was adopted to cope with problems brought by rapid urbanization. There have emerged lots of slogans such as smart cities, digital cities, and hybrid cities. Also, the Chinese government invested a lot in promoting smart city projects, and thus it leads to the widespread new media technologies in Chinese urban spaces. In these two processes, multi-dimensional urban space and multiple forms of new media intersect each other. They reshape the urban landscape, making it an ideal experimental site for the integration of new media into public art and architecture in China. There have emerged plenty of unique urban media art projects. However, contrary to their amazing growth, unique features, and influence in creating new genres and transforming urban spaces, the implications of these projects in mainland China are rarely discussed. Researchers have yet to fully reflect on their implications on urban society and culture, where new media technologies continue to be introduced at an ever-accelerating pace. Therefore, my research question is, how has urban media art transformed the urban space in mainland China, especially in terms of its cultural and social implications? It consists of some sub-questions. How has it influenced and changed the way people perceive and use urban spaces in mainland China, departing from previous art forms? In what ways does urban media art shape new forms of social interaction in urban spaces? What do these projects mean to various groups and communities? How do urban media art projects contribute to the formation of new urban cultures and identities in Chinese cities? The first selected case for my research is the Metro City Screen in Shanghai. Located in the Shujiao area, this screen serves as a prominent feature of the Metro City shopping mall. It was originally constructed in 1998, but recently underwent a technological upgrade and was officially illuminated on February 22, 2022. There have been controversies within the field of urban media art in mainland China. Scholars argue that current practices in mainland regions are limited to basic light and shadow effects applied to architectural components and urban decorations, and do not qualify as true art projects. The emergence of urban platforms that showcase independent artworks from digital artists, such as the spherical screen at Metro City that displays the works of Li Muzi, demonstrates that the field has evolved beyond the simple light and shadow effects. One primary reason for selecting this case is its landmark status. Situated in the Shujiao CBD, which is renowned for its concentration of upscale shopping centers and department stores, the Metro City holds a prominent position. Built in 1989, it stands out as a notable landmark in the area, largely owing to its distinctive spherical structure that emits a captivating glow in the evenings. It is known for being the main electronics market in Shanghai, and it is also home to many restaurants and cafes, while there is a cinema on the top floor. The second reason is its screen position, which offers excellent visibility and accessibility to the public. The screen is located at the intersection of Hongqiao Road, Huashan Road, and Zhangjiabang Road, serving as a vital transportation hub with a significant daily influx of traffic. The intersection features 4 wide pedestrian crossings, providing a large audience with a clear view of the screens. The final reason is its artistic excellence. At the sole screen in China with a spectacular shape, the Metro City screen has showcased a multitude of creative campaigns with good artistic quality and aesthetic appeal. Another example is the Chengdu Taqi urban screen. Scholars argue that Chinese urban spaces primarily consist of commercialized projects rather than artistic ones. However, in the realm of new media, the line between art and design is often blurred. On one hand, many artists sustain themselves through commercial design work, while on the other hand, professional designers often drive the evolution of new media through systematic experimentation and establishment of new standards and conventions. For example, the commercial animation company DeBoer has also created numerous public artworks displayed on this screen in Chengdu. The first reason for selecting it is its innovation and creativity. A notable example of this is the recent public art piece titled Panda's Greeting, showcased during 2021's National Day celebration. This project was a collaborative effort between DeBoer, a leading creative agents, and the China Conservation and Research Center for the Giant Panda. It involved a 4-day on-site film expedition, resulting in the world's first monumental naked eye 3D footage of pandas. This artwork showcases the pioneering use of technology, the incorporation of unconventional artistic concepts, and a willingness to push the boundaries of urban media art. By examining this case study, we can understand how innovative and creative approaches can transform public spaces, captivate audiences, and redefine the possibilities of artistic expression in urban environments. Another reason is its popularity. The Chengdu Taqi urban screen has gained significant popularity, not only for its physical presence, but also through extensive coverage in news reports and widespread attention on various social media platforms. It has evolved into a prominent landmark in Chengdu, disseminating art and conceptual ideas. The screen provides an opportunity for people to immerse themselves in an artistic atmosphere right in the heart of the Chengdu city center. So for my future research, it will analyze the social and cultural consequences underlying the presence of these urban media art projects, providing a multifaceted perspective of its socio-cultural significance rather than sheer novelty. It will also reflect on whether urban media art projects ultimately improve human conditions. Thus, it contributes to a more rounded understanding of urban media art both as an art form and a cultural phenomenon in mainland China. That's all for my presentation. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Shujiao. I feel like I'm talking to, yes, I feel like I'm talking to a person who is actually there. So we have two more provocations, each of them about 8 minutes. And the next provocation is from Kingsley, who is Associate Professor of the School of Creative Arts at Hong Kong Baptist University.
Media architecture has long been associated with urban screens, interactive media facades, and large-scale public projections. In this brief presentation, we aim to dive into the realm of media architecture beyond the confines of the fixed screen and embrace a more site-specific, cross-disciplinary, and experiential approach. Our first project is called 25 Minutes Older. It introduces a live cinematic experience on a moving tram. With the principle of camera obscura, it weaves together literature, music, and live projection of the cityscape to create an immersive journey. As passengers travel through the city, they witness the surrounding transform into moving tablets, blurring the lines between reality and fiction. The second project, After the Deluge, is a prominent art experience that takes us along on Yunnan, Long Tunnel, and Stormwater Tank. Collaborating with the Drainage Services Departments of Hong Kong, this project delves into the spaces as fast as 40 Olympic swimming pools. Through art installations, soundscapes, and poetic writings, visitors are invited to explore these hidden realms, forging unique connections with the subterranean environments and the people working behind the scenes to keep our city functioning. The last project is titled Nanyang, in collaboration with Stephanie Jen. It is a participatory workshop with Children Under the Stars in a town boasting the oldest surviving astronomical observatory in Asia. It engages families to take part in an imaginative journey a shooting star has descended to Earth and spent a day in Kunchu. When it wants to return home, it needs magic power and a star map for traveling across the light years. The participating families give a hand by creating a work of topic arts together. In conclusion, this project exemplifies the exploration of media architecture's potential to provide intimate moments between individuals, the built environment, and the spirit of the place. By extending beyond the traditional screen-based paradigm, they offer unique opportunities for engagement, connections, and artistic expression. Thank you very much. Media architecture is long.
Great. All right, thank you, Kingsley. And our final provocation is from Luc Hespanhol. He's senior lecturer at Design Lab, School of Architecture, Design and Planning at the University of Sydney.
Hello, everyone. My name is Luc Hespanhol, senior lecturer in design at the University of Sydney, Australia. In this provocation talk for the Emergent Visions Symposium, I'll be discussing the new landscape for media architecture and urban media prompted by the COVID-19 pandemic. A few months ago, I published an article which you can access via this QR code now on the screen. And in this article, I discussed what I perceive to be an emerging model for the creation of shared identities around urban locations, which I called augmented placemaking. It reflected on the increasing hybridity we got used to find anywhere since the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns, and the consequent fragmentation of experiences in what was previously experienced as shared urban spaces. A symptom of this pervasive coexistence of physical and digital layers of experience associated to a place is precisely the proliferation of QR codes everywhere, which became a kind of urban hyperlink, enabling access to otherwise hidden virtual dimensions of the place. If on the one hand, QR codes have contributed to greater accessibility to information, they may also have contributed to segregate and fragment urban experience. For example, QR codes have been used both as gateways to exclusive experiences linked to public spaces and products, and also to restrict to the actual physical access to urban spaces, particularly during the lockdowns. Based on that, I theorized two new categories of urban spaces. The first one is what I call digital utopia, or a known place. So this word, utopia, has been previously used to describe generic places such as an airport, which is the same everywhere pretty much, while at the same time subscribing to unique dynamics and aesthetics that makes it recognizable as an airport. Since the pandemic started, this is the sort of spaces that we got used to go and socialize at. Zoom being precisely the greatest example. In fact, we're doing it right now, occupying very different physical spaces, subject to completely different dynamics at different time zones, while at the same time united intellectually and emotionally through the digital utopia. This is me now on Zoom, showing a screenshot of another talk of me on Zoom gave last week at my paper presentation at the NYU Online program. In turn, talking about a physical location in Sydney, itself augmented by digital urban media, so very meta. The MAB Gather Room is another example of a digital utopia, a known place, where we can go there and we can meet and socialize, following shared rules and engaging intellectually and emotionally in what is essentially a known place. The second category of places consists on what I call digital heterotopias, which is a term used to describe a place capable of assuming multiple identities. And in fact, I have identified two kinds of heterotopias, what I call critical and utopic heterotopias. The critical heterotopias are places with multiple identities created to foster civic friction. So for example, since the COVID-19 lockdowns and a movement of guerrilla urban projections have emerged in Brazil and other Latin American countries, driven mostly by citizens locked in their apartments, getting hold of projectors and pointing those out back into the city in a movement to reclaim it. It started probably spontaneously in various different cities, and then over time the movement evolved, united through social media. The images are often ephemeral and in fact created for social media primarily, yet is their placement in the city's urban architecture what lends them power. It's movement of reclaiming the city through digital media, even though it may be locked down. The second kind of heterotopia, which I call utopic heterotopia, are also places with multiple identities, but those identities are created instead to foster well-being. So coming back to São Paulo, building on that momentum about building projections, the digital curator Maria Pascoli, who is a member of the Media Architecture Biennale's advisory board, organized an urban arts festival back in 2020 during the lockdowns in the city, which I had the privilege to participate in. So it was all about putting art back on the streets and connecting with fellow artists and digital creators and promoting with good feeling in a time that was very dark for everyone. This is another example. It's called Wave. It's placed in Seoul, in South Korea. It's a work by a local studio called District. They created this three-dimensional urban screen which occasionally display commercials, but yet their philosophy was more to use media architecture to reintroduce natural elements into the urban landscape and thus promoting feelings of well-being. They actually took that approach even further by creating what they call Arte Museum, first with a venue in Seoul, and then with another in the island of Jeju in South Korea, entirely dedicated to virtual nature. According to the CEO, Sean, who I had the privilege to interview, the idea came from observing the need people had during the pandemic, but also before the pandemic, to escape into nature, even when in the middle of the city. The argument was that the place not only offers a physical expression of the so-called metaverse, assume different identities over time, but also enables accessibility to beautiful landscapes that could be far away for people who otherwise might not have the means or the opportunities to travel. This new category of public spaces, prompted by COVID-19, exacerbated social dynamics already previously observed with social media, smart cities, and other forms of ubiquitous computing. To quote Jonathan Crary in his excellent book 24/7, experience now consists of sudden and frequent shifts from absorption in a cocoon of control and personalization into the contingency of a shared world intrinsically resistant to control. The experience of these shifts inevitably enhances one's attraction to the former. It magnifies the mirage of one's own privileged exemption from the apparent shortness and the insufficiency of the word in common. Within 24/7 capitalism, as a sociality outside of individual self-interest becomes inexorably depleted, and the interhuman basis of public space is made irrelevant to one's phantasmatic digital singularity. So based on that, my question to the panel is that, what are the implications for media architecture and cities of this dissonant hybridity, which is what I call this breakdown between the physical sensorial on one side and the emotional intellectual on the other side, the skewed narratives of a place. So what are the implications for media architecture and cities of this dissonant hybridity, breakdown between the physical sensorial and emotional intellectual narratives of a place? Look forward to discussion, and thank you.
Is this on? Yes, okay. So I want to thank you for your patience with the hybrid nature of our panel. In some ways, it's, you know, the purpose of this panel and the purpose of bringing everyone together was to think about the distinct. What we asked each of the presenters to do is to describe and think about particular uses of urban screens within their particular contexts, but with an aim for providing a kind of provocation for how we might think about and practice urban screens in a broader sense, right? So how can things that are not proximate to us maybe inspire other ways of thinking about what urban screens can do or cannot do from one location to another? So what I will do is, and I think in some ways that's how they share the sort of, they're very distinct in their locations, but they share that same kind of notion of provoking what is possible, but also what is not possible with it for these kinds of facades and screens within different locations, right? I'm also struck, of course, by, like, we're not always talking directly about the screen, but the context of the screen, or what is adjacent, or what is associative to, right? I think that's where creativity and possibilities can also take place. So I'd like to, we have some time for questions. Questions can be for a particular panelist, they're all here, or for the panel as a whole, or for the organizers. But would we have any questions from the audience? Here. Or I'll begin with a question, and then you all can sort of think about how to enter into this. So this is a question, I'm going to ask a question to whoever wants to respond amongst our panelists here, Taqi as well. And so what each of you, in our discussion before, that led to this presentation, one thing we really noticed was the ways in which public and publicness sort of run across your various presentations, the different ways in which each of your examples addresses publics or dissuades a certain notion of publicness as well. And as you think about your own presentation and your case, compared to what you see the others in here, like where do you see publicness being at play in terms of what is possible and not possible for your examples or the examples of the folks around you? I would guess, Yomi, would you want to start? Do you have you nodded, so it makes me think you might have something to say.
I'll say very briefly that actually not responding directly to any of the presentations, I really have to say something about the keynote speech by Sherry Dobbins, part of the virtual part of mab23. I was fascinated by it. I thought it was a fantastic talk. And at the same time, it was really interesting to note the difference in how Dobbins was thinking of these spaces and of her intervention, specifically in Times Square, as a way of bringing everybody together, what she called the media triangle, together, how to create a positive effect. And I can totally see where she's coming from, right? I mean, I have absolutely no problem with her logic, but let's consider the fact that this is just one possible logic, and that public, you know, it's so easy for us to think of the public as the public sphere in the Habermasian way, and that's my pet peeve all over the place. And it was really interesting to see how Luke's presentation kind of, for me, brought the panel together at the very end in that question of what is utopia, 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 right? And what he did not mention, but always lurks in the background, is also dystopia. I'll stop here.
Would you have a response to that, Luke, or something to follow?
Yes, I agree. I think through the presentation, it became quite apparent the dialogical nature of urban screens as almost like as a connecting tissue across different strata of society and different discourses. There's different dynamics at play, governments using the broadcast nature of especially large urban screens to push messages through society, and on the other hand, citizens making use of those very, very large ways of disseminating messages to fight back and to try to have a voice within the city, and then this sort of third space going in parallel, which are places of escape, of getting away from society almost, and reinventing a reality that might be more suitable or potentially just a fantasy land. I mean, I really relate to the example from Yomi of the Yuko showrooms, right? This idea of an artificial public space we're showing idealized version of reality. And I relate that to the utopic utopias that I mentioned on my topic. I mean, this idea of escaping to a better but very artificial and dystopic in its own way urban space. So it's very interesting to see now this dialogue that has been present since the 60s from Taqi's talk in Pakistan and in Chile, and those dynamics already at play since then, now exploding into not only the different spaces of the metropolis, but also virtually, and then therefore perpetuating in different spheres and being reappropriated in different spheres. And I think that offers the tip of a thread for discussions on the potential future of urban screens and how the content and their presence in the public realm may actually evolve from here.
Very quickly, because I'm going to have to leave soon, so first apologies for that. I wonder if Kingsley has anything to say about his experience, specifically considering that Art Basel was also the sponsor of some of those light shows on ICC, that tower that Ted showed, and his work came at the heels of that big scandal that was in 2016.
Yes, I believe, yes, the slide you show, that installation was 1 year before our project. So it was in 2016, and our project was in 2017. Well, yeah, I don't know how, so what's the actual question? Sorry, it's 5 a.m. in the morning, maybe I'm not processing it very well. So the question is like, how was the collaboration with Art Basel on this kind of topic?
What did public mean for you in the context of what happened before?
What happened before? Well, I'm not so sure if I'm answering directly, but when I'm approaching these public projects, I thought about how certainly, of course, a lot of the cited projects in the 60s and 70s, there's a kind of social, there's a kind of like a institutional critique angle to a lot of the projects. I'm thinking, for instance, Euclid's maintenance project. But then we can also see artists like Euclid in the last few decades also working very closely with government officials in building parks and working on more collaborative efforts in making something happen. So I do see working with public space and working with many partners, there is a kind of interspace of proposing something that is maybe rather not possible outside of the realm of art. So yeah, that's maybe how I and our collaborators approach these kind of efforts. It is, yeah, I can certainly relate to the case that you have cited. Of course, it's a very important and controversial work that also brought a lot of discussions in the arts community in Hong Kong. Of course, on one hand, it is legitimate to say, well, we should have space for voices and expression. That is certainly what we wish we have. But at the same time, of course, since the incidence of that project, that is very difficult. It would be very difficult for art practitioners to collaborate with, say, developers. And of course, that screen is there was a time where it was very welcoming for artists to showcase works on this massive screen. But since that incident, it became very cautious, and likewise for many other screens in Hong Kong. So yeah, so sometimes it's like one step forward and then 10 steps backward. And yeah, I'm not so sure I'm answering the question. But apology, maybe the time zone that plays a part in this. Yeah, but I appreciate the question very much. Thank you.
I just wanted to step in with a comment about a particular project that you mentioned, Yomi, and that we're discussing now. One of the things that came up when during the symposium in 2018, which of course you were there and attending, when Maurice Benayoun gave a presentation about the project. And one of the questions I thought that came up was really, what was the responsibility of the artists themselves to the artistic community at large, right, in deliberately creating a project that they essentially knew that was going to be taken down, right, and create great controversy. As you said, Yomi, that was the point of the project itself, right, that it created international controversy, and the immediate effect, you know, couldn't have been surprising to the artists, was that it was taken down and no more, that ICC building could no longer be used as a venue for artworks, right? So you might ask yourself, you know, what is the ethical responsibility then of the artists for the artistic community at large in that instance, knowing that this action would have caused this, right? So I think there's a lot of very complex issues at stake when we discuss publicness, the responsibility of the artist's vision, the audience reception, as well as the stakeholders that we have, you know, in question. which also came up, I thought, very interestingly in Sherry Dobbins' talk last week, where she was asking, where she was, suggesting that that the kinds of images that you place, on these large screens, have an impact. And so the example that she gave was, asking artists to consider, would nudity be acceptable, or in a space such as that? And what is the point of doing that in such a public space such as Times Square, right? So a lot of these types of discussions, these back and forth considerations across audience, stakeholders, and creatives, I think isn't really discussed or shown, when you see the final projects themselves. And so I thought that's, these are again the adjacent types of activities that happen behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, maybe I just want to supplement.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe just to supplement quickly to that is that there's also the intention for the experience of the work to be open, so that they can allow levels of criticalities in how to react to the work or the relationship that is crafted with the work, and so I think it is quite important, although maybe there is certain constraints in the macro sense, but for the personal or intimate experience of the works, I think there can be also a wide range of diversities and inviting criticalities in the being. So, yeah, just wanted to add that on. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. I think, Yomi, you have to leave, but thank you so much. I'm going to give another opportunity to the room if there are any questions or comments to any particular presentation or to us as a whole. Yes. How shall we do? Oh, you have the mic.
Yes, thank you.
Much. I heard the word provocation several times, and so I'm just going to provoke you guys. There's so many things that come out of this. Number one, who is behind the screen, right? And I don't just mean whoever is paying for it, but who actually lives or works behind that giant apparatus, right? Nobody's thinking about that, it seems to me. Number two, who says I have to look at some artist's work? So if I go to a gallery, I know what I'm going to see or whose work I'm going to see. Now, who gives that artist permission to assume that everybody wants to see my work, and if they don't want to, they will anyway, right? There's an ethical thing that's bigger than this discussion here, right? So it's a multifaceted question, right? There's a, and I mean no offense to anyone, there's a collective arrogance to this. You're going to look at my art no matter what. And if it doesn't work, well, I did it to provoke you, right? And it's not necessarily the screen itself. The art might be ephemeral, but not the screen, because tomorrow there'll be something else there. So if I go to Times Square, I'm expecting it, sure. But that's not everything that we saw today. There are lots of examples that were cited today that are not about the Times Squares of the world where you would go to view the spectacle. You're driving down a road, a main road, or you're living in a specific neighborhood, and all of a sudden someone's decided that you're gonna love this image, right, or imagery. So it's more of a comment than a question, but I say this to provoke all of you, and you can deal with it now.
Yeah, I think it's a great comment, and if you notice, the whole dilemma of screens is that screens are right now what television was in the 50s, where television was very passive, and the viewer was very passive. Television was bombarding and flashing you with images, but you didn't have much to do. And then you ended up having a remote control. And then you ended up having internet. And then so on and so forth. And then that brought that transparency, that who is triggering these images, who is operating on this plane, so that we can deconstruct what's going on behind the screen. And are we really supposed to engage with this screen or not? So I think the stage we are on right now, it's very like sorts of baby steps towards screen evolution. And that's a very genuine and very relevant question, not just ethical, it's also political question as well, that who holds the power to show these screens, and what gives you that impetus to consume these screens, not just the content, just the presence of those screens. So thank you for this comment. I think this is great.